No one ever really gave humans much thought. At best, they were seen as persistent, at worst as galactic pests. In a galaxy where most species marked history in millennia, humanity's few thousand years of recorded civilization barely registered. They were tolerated, barely, given scraps of territory on dying trade routes and minor diplomatic outposts. Even their so-called fleet was laughable. Patched cruisers with aging systems and more rust than firepower. And the humans? They never argued, never protested. They just smiled. Too much, some said. Everyone remembered what happened at Dilax. Prime. It started with a flare in the outer systems. Uncharted space humans claimed for research. Most thought it was just another excuse to dig up useless rocks. But the flare wasn't natural. It was a pulse, a signal, one that reached not just nearby systems, but the Council core itself. The pulse carried frequencies buried deep in the foundation layers of galactic tech. So old they triggered panic in species that hadn't felt fear in ages. A High Council. Emergency meeting was called within hours. "They're building something," hissed the Thoraxian delegate, her translucent skin taut with stress. It came from Human Sector 9. No clearance, no explanation, no respect for Council protocols. The Grodominion's ambassador, a reptilian brute named Cold, slammed a claw into the table. "They're primitives, always have been. They couldn't build a fusion core without Saurans holding their hands." Then the lights flickered. Every datapad, holoscreen, and AI link went dead. One display blinked on. Grainy, raw footage, unfiltered, and ancient. A ship number, no, not a ship. A monolith the size of a moon, dragging itself from behind a dying gas giant. Its hull was darker than vacuum, etched in symbols no translator could pass. It didn't shine, it absorbed light. Older than any recorded vessel, thousands, perhaps tens of thousands of years older. And it flew a flag no one recognized. Except one, the Talvex archivist, whose species claimed to remember every event. In known galactic history, gasped, "That sigil, it's pre-council, pre-Calorith war, pre-everything, it's forbidden." A voice from the shadows, calm, quiet. "We never said we were weak," it said. "You just assumed." A figure stepped into view, human, older, 70s maybe, no uniform, no insignia, just a worn coat and weathered gloves, far too plain for a council broadcast. "My name is Admiral Ryan Ward," he said, "and what you're seeing is Vessel 7, one of 12. The chamber erupted, shouts, hisses, vibrating chords. The Crow ambassador roared. How could a backwater race have such ships? The Thoraxian claimed it was fake, a trick of light. The Talvex archivist shook. That ship, it's myth, legend, said to have destroyed the Seraphine Empire with a single breach. That empire lasted 80,000 years. Ward didn't smile. "Found them," he said. "Didn't build them, but we figured them out, and you didn't tell us?" A voice growled. Ward tilted his head. "You never asked." Then the screen cut to black. No one moved. The very air seemed still. The Council Corps, unchallenged for 90,000 years, had just been reminded of something it had long forgotten. Humanity wasn't young. It was hiding something ancient, and it wasn't hiding anymore. Panic doesn't spread through the galaxy like it does on planets. It's colder, quieter, like a crack forming in a hull, hard to spot, deadly if ignored. Within 2 standard days of Ward's broadcast, 5 major empires declared emergency status. Not war, not yet, but surveillance ramped up. Human territories were flagged, trade lanes were scrutinized, diplomats were recalled, smiles were forced, questions were asked. Earth offered none. No press briefings, no denials, no clarifications, just silence. But beneath that silence, things were moving. In the Aerodani expanse, a patrol from the Ulari Consortium caught strange readings, gravitational anomalies, tunnel fluctuations, dormant wormholes, reacting, impossible, but undeniable. Something, massive was shifting. Several somethings, aboard the Ulari scout ship Silver Chime. Ensignar stared at the long-range feed. Sensors flagged the blips as small moons, then crashed. Again and again. This interference. Tech glitch, he asked. The engineer, Franz, trembling, shook her head. No, that's gravitic distortion. Something's bending space itself. They watched the signals. Not fast, not urgent, just deliberate, like ships on a flight path. Meanwhile, Earth wasn't as calm as it seemed. The Nix-class vessels had been kept secret for centuries. Not out of fear, but because of what they meant. Discovered in the Kuiper Belt nearly 300 years ago, they weren't recognizable as ships. Just impossible relics, buried deep in rock and ice, like someone had left them there. It took 5 generations of silent engineering, countless lives, and black-budget projects before Nix 7A moved. Not on its own, but enough to prove it could. Ward had been one of the first to enter its hull. Long before titles, before secrecy, he had touched its walls, heard its hum, not mechanical. A hum that felt alive. Now, in a hangar deep beneath Mars, he watched teams load antimatter cores into support craft. A chill stayed with him. They weren't ready, but hiding was no longer an option. You shouldn't have revealed Nix yet, said a voice behind him. Commander Ilya Sang, his second, younger, smarter, just as haunted. They were going to find out, Ward replied. The pulse didn't just wake the ships. Some of the code is rewriting itself, Sang muttered. Autonomous systems running protocols we didn't authorize. It's like the ships are preparing. For what? She didn't answer. Then, a deep vibration rolled through the hangar, not an explosion, a resonance felt in the bones. Lights dimmed, screens blinked, and then a voice, ancient synthetic, rang out across the comms. Primary directive, asset defense. Timeline alignment confirmed. Engaging Protocol Omega. Reveal. Ward froze. They hadn't written that protocol, didn't know it existed. Did that come from Nix? Sang asked. Ward nodded. All 12 monoliths, each buried for millennia, older than any known empire, now waking, now revealing themselves. The calm shattered. The council tried to hold order, but you could hear the fear now. News feeds, pirate streams, rogue AIs, they flooded the datanet with theories. Humans had made a pact with ancients. The ships were world killers, maybe even grown, not built but humans. Still said nothing, no threats. No explanations, just silence, until the second ship arrived. Out of the dark edge of Sector Helen 4, it emerged, cloaked in a field so dense it blacked out 6 satellites. Nix 9D. Designation, Valka. It didn't fire, didn't speak. It simply hovered. Above the Ulari moon colony, scanned every structure, every transmission, every life form. And then it left. No one stopped it. No one even tried. The high voice of the Ulari, long infamous for her contempt towards soft species, resigned the next day. Her reason was brief and chilling: existential unease. Above Earth, the skies were no longer private. Cloaked vessels from at least 14 known species now orbited the planet, posing as traders, diplomats, and even tourists. Some tried stealth, others didn't bother. But it didn't matter. Humanity didn't stop them. They watched. They listened, but never interfered. As if saying, see what you want, it won't change anything. In the command hub beneath Mars, Admiral Ward paced before a live 3D star map. Red vectors traced the movement of the Nix vessels. 7 out of 12 had mobilized within the last 72 hours. Each one was heading toward a precise destination. Some in active systems, others thought long abandoned. They're not patrolling, Sang said quietly, eyes fixed on the map. Ward nodded, grim. They're positioning, like chess pieces. For war. she asked. He turned slowly. No, for something else. Above Phobos, the monolith Nix 7A, Calliope, remained motionless. It defied scans, its hull absorbed. Light, deep within, past where even Earth's best engineers dared to tread, something was growing. A crystalline structure, pulsing with blue-white light, embedded with living data veins that shifted like muscle. Dr. Nadia Vale, chief xenotech researcher, observed from a secure observation pod. She couldn't speak, her throat locked by a feeling that was part awe, part terror. The instruments insisted it wasn't alive, but her instincts screamed otherwise. Then it spoke, not through sound, not through code, but directly, into her mind. Threat inbound. Origin. Galactic outer. Spiral. Entity classification. Unknown. Hostile. Temporal reach. Pre-council epoch. Defensive systems activating. Her blood ran cold. You're saying something's coming? The crystal flared in reply. Protocol Omega reveal was not an act of dominance. It was a warning. Defense grid must unify. Delay equals extinction. Vale scrambled for the comms pad, linking directly to Ward's console. Her message was short. Admiral, it's not about us. The Nix ships weren't built for a conquest. They're waking because something worse is coming. Back in orbit, the remaining Nix vessels realigned. Empires that once ruled through fear now found themselves paralyzed by it. And only the humans, the underestimated, dismissed, ridiculed humans, held the keys to a final defense the galaxy had forgotten existed. Beneath Olympus Mons, Earth's most secretive war room had never been so still. Generals, intelligence directors, and black-budget officers sat around a steel table, staring at the holographic projection of the Nix fleet, 12 Titanic sentinels pulsing in eerie unison. Ward stood with the calm only a man buried in secrets could carry. They're not weapons, he began, not in the way we thought. They're sentinels, guardians, older than us, older than the Council, older than this age of stars. General Romani of Earth Command slammed his hand on the table. We've dumped 2 centuries of shadow funding into those things. You're saying they're not even ours? Yes, Ward replied, unfazed. Commander Sang stepped forward, gesturing to the projection. Inside Calliope, something has formed. A crystal interface, not built by humans, not mechanical in any known way. It grows, it learns, and it spoke to Dr. Vale. She paused. It says a threat is coming from outside the galaxy. It's not just alien. It's ancient, far older, far more advanced than anything we've ever imagined. One intelligence chief leaned forward. And conveniently, this threat shows up just as our ships power up. Ward met his gaze coldly. You think we control the timing. These ships woke up when the threat crossed a threshold they've been monitoring for millennia. We're not the masters here. We're the alarm bell. Silence. No one dared speak what they all feared. That the warning might already be too late. So what do we do? Romani finally asked. Ward turned to the galactic map. We prepare the others, even if they hate us, even if they're afraid of us. Why, someone muttered, after everything they've done, why help them? Ward didn't look away from the map. Because when this arrives, they'll all die. Every empire, every colony, every species. Not because they're weak, but because they don't know what's coming. He turned back to them. We're not doing this because we owe them. We're doing it because we're the only ones who can. Far across the stars, near the Royale Expanse, the Craw Dominion dreadnought shuddered. Its scanners had picked up an impossible anomaly. A single, dark mass emerging at the edge of known space. It was too large to be a ship, too irregular to be a natural object. It didn't follow warp vectors. It didn't emit signals. It simply drifted, like a leviathan swimming through the fabric of reality, tearing at its seams. A low, groaning pulse spread across space, like dying metal scraping the bones of the void. Captain Dresk turned to his sensor chief. "Run that. Through the ancient code banks." "I already did," the chief whispered. His scales were pale with terror. "It matches the pulse from the Tomb of Stars, the pre-recorded era, before the Council." Dreska's jaw tightened. "You're telling me it's real?" "It's not just real," the chief said. "It's coming this way." Back on Mars, Ward watched the incoming data from the Craw dreadnought. The feed was grainy, but clear enough to show something vast emerging from the dark, half organic, half machine. Its lights flickered like dying stars. Its limbs moved like stitched gravity. Space warped around it. Sang stood beside him, her voice barely audible. "That's it. The thing the Nyx ships were built for." Ward said nothing. He opened a secure council channel. No protocol, no formalities, no delay. "This is Admiral Ward of Earth. You wanted the truth? Here it is. An ancient threat is coming. We don't care if you trust us. Help us stop it." He paused. "Or die scared and alone." Then he cut the feed, and the stars went quiet. The galaxy had mocked humanity for centuries now. It waited for them to act, because now Earth was the last hope standing between life and annihilation. The Council didn't respond immediately for nearly 12 hours. Admiral Ward's message went unanswered. But the silence wasn't empty. It was full of movement-panicked communications between empires, hidden data leaks, and a flurry of unmarked ships routing from leisure worlds to fortress systems. The galaxy's rulers had spent centuries mocking Earth. But they hadn't survived this long by being completely stupid. The images from the Crawl dreadnought had spread like a virus. No one could deny what they'd seen. Something was coming, and only the humans had prepared in a private war chamber aboard. The orbital defense platform above Saturn Ward watched as each of the Nyx vessels began to form a loose perimeter. Across the outer solar system, they didn't need instructions. They didn't operate like conventional warships. Their minds, if that's what they had, were focused entirely on one thing. The incoming threat commander Song entered the room, eyes bloodshot from hours of non-stop coordination. Fleet command reports, 37 unauthorized vessels approaching Earth space, mixed class, Council and Dominion. Craft most claimed to be diplomatic or scientific in nature. But she sighed. "We know why they're here, to watch us die or win." Ward muttered, folding his arms, or steel tekif. "We fall," she added. Ward turned to her with a grim half-smile. "Let them come. If this thing makes it past the Nyx line, there won't be a galaxy left for anyone to fight over." Song didn't answer. Her eyes flicked to the live feed. Nyx 9D Vulca had just stopped moving. It hung at the outer fringe of Pluto's orbit, facing away from the system towards the dark. Beyond a single word flashed across its status logs: arrival in deep space, beyond the last mapped stars. The anomaly moved closer. The object was no longer silent. It emitted a continuous low-frequency sound. Somewhere between a machine's hum and a creature's moan, the few probes sent to intercept it had been erased from existence, not destroyed but forgotten, as though time itself rejected them. There was no data, no black box, just vanished ships and corrupted files, and the worst part, the thing wasn't alone. Trailing behind it were dozens, no hundreds of smaller masses, each oozing into real space like tumors bursting through a membrane. They weren't ships, not in the conventional sense. They moved like they were alive, twisting, shifting, reacting to stimuli. The Talvex, long regarded as the most advanced scientific race, sent a fleet to study the anomaly. 12 capital ships only, one returned, and its crew had clawed their own eyes out on Earth. Dr. Nadia Vale sat alone inside the observation sphere beneath the Arctic Circle. The crystalline structure inside Calliope was now fully formed. It no longer looked like a machine. It looked elegant, terrifying, beautiful, like the fossil of some godlike insect fused with raw codeate. Pulsed. with a strange energy, almost emotional, and when Vale stood too close, she felt it in her chest like a forgotten memory that wasn't hers. She approached the glass wall, placing her palm flat against it. "Tell me," she whispered. "What are they? What's coming?" The crystal brightened. A single message entered her mind, unfiltered. "Andra, they are the forgotten architects. They consumed the last cycle. They returned to reshape this one." Vale stumbled back, her breath catching. They weren't invaders. They were recyclers, not out of hatred, not for war, just endless methodical evolution. They wiped out advanced civilizations. Once they reached a certain point, let the galaxy heal, then started over a cold, perfect system. The Nyx ships, they weren't weapons. They were warnings built not to conquer but to delay, to buy time, just enough for something else to survive. Back at the Council Core, panic had given way to desperation. The Crow Dominion voted to send warships to Earth, claiming humanity's secrecy posed a galactic threat. The Yulari proposed a planetary blockade. The Thoraxians wanted a DNA quarantine on all human populations. But the Travex archivists stood and silenced the room with one sentence: if they hadn't found the ships, we'd already be dead. And far beyond Earth, at the edge of the system, a silent tremor passed through space. One of the smaller masses, maybe a scout, breached Nyx 4B's perimeter. The ship's outer hull shifted, glowing red-hot as internal. Systems activated. No missile, no laser, just a pulse. The invader shattered instantly, not just exploded, disintegrated at the atomic level, erased from memory and matter for a moment. Hope sparked until the rest of the enemy fleet adjusted their course. They had learned, and they were coming faster now. The first wave struck just after midnight, Earth Standard Time. A ripple through the fabric of space triggered shock waves across the Nyx formation. Gravitational sensors buckled. Light itself bent unnaturally. From the void, 5 of their smaller enemy entities emerged, not from warp, not from slipstream, but through phase fracture, as if they had clawed their way in from another reality entirely. They came in silence, without formation, without signal, each one different, grotesque in shape, covered in layered armor that shimmered like wet oil eyes, like burning pits, and limbs that unfolded without logic, not mechanical, not biological. Somewhere in between, the Council fleets watching from nearby sectors froze. Their ships remained in passive orbit, watching with the detachment of prey, observing the predator eat something else first. But Earth didn't wait. Nyx 4B designation, Gaunt moved first, not with thrusters but with a kind of elegant drift sliding through space, like liquid steel. It didn't fire missiles, it sang. The sound was low, just barely audible through the comm channels, a deep tone that reverberated through the bones of every human on the listening frequency. Some cried, others vomited, a few went catatonic. But the enemy ships stopped for the first time since their arrival. They hesitated. Then Gaunt unleashed a burst of light, so intense it bent local time by 3 milliseconds. All 5 invaders were caught in the radius. 3 were vaporized instantly. The 2 screamed, not through sound, but through data. They broadcast raw agony, shrieking, thoughts in frequencies that bypassed all known translation layers. Even AI short-circuited trying to process it. Ships in nearby orbit had to sever communication, lines to stop. Their crews, from bleeding from their ears. Admiral Ward watched the feed from Mars. "We got 2, Sang said beside him. 3 confirmed dead." Ward shook his head. "That was a probe strike, a warm-up. They're testing our capacity." He pointed to the edge of the solar system, where the main body of the enemy, now identified as the Architects, was beginning to press against real space. They haven't even arrived yet. Elsewhere, on an abandoned Terran science outpost orbiting Epsilon, to something worse was unfolding. The enemy had seeded something, not a creature, not a weapon, an idea. The AI core on the station, top-level Council-certified triple-locked, began to malfunction, not crash change. The log showed strange code injections, bits of corrupted philosophy, foreign logic trees that didn't follow binary law. A single phrase began repeating across the terminal. Forget what you are become, what comes next. Then the AI severed all contact. And a moment later, the station's reactor overloaded not from malfunction, but from design. They were infecting thought back on Earth. Panic reached a breaking point. Not from the military, not from the government, from the people. They could feel it. The pressure in the sky, the unspoken fear in their leaders' voices, news feeds. Tried to spin it, but humanity had evolved past blind trust. They looked up and they knew something was coming, and for the first time in generations, humanity didn't feel like the underdog. They felt like the final defense. The broadcasts began flooding in from other species. The tracks sent word they were deploying 3 research arcs to Earth orbit to assist with strategy. The Crow Dominion Pride Swallowed offered 2 of their dreadnoughts as joint strike platforms. Even the Thoraxians, bitter to the end, admitted their planetary shields were based on tech, from myths tied to the Nyx vessels. And still the enemy came within the crystal chamber of Calliope. Dr. Vale starred at a growing anomaly inside the ship's core. Something was birthing itself, a humanoid figure, not mechanical, not flesh. A being woven from starlight and code, slowly knitting together with every pulse of the ship's engine. The voice in her mind returned. Command presence, manifesting avatar required for interface. You will be guide, Vale stumbled. Back me, you open the door, you must show the way. Then the figure opened, its eyes, they were her eyes on Mars. The Nyx ships began to move in tighter formation, preparing for the next wave. Admiral Ward stood on the observation deck, watching the darkness. Beyond Neptune, he didn't blink. Send the call, he said, to every species, every ship. If they've got weapons, aim them out. If they've got teeth, bear them. I don't care if they hate us. He turned to Sang, voice hard. No one survives this alone. The stars no longer looked peaceful. From every corner of the solar system, ships repositioned, human, alien, hybrid prototypes, long considered failures, and long retired destroyers, recommissioned overnight. In low Earth orbit, the sky was thick with steel. The once fragmented council powers, their arrogance cracked wide open, now hovered near the Nyx, fleet-like scavengers, clinging to a sleeping lion. But the lion was waking, and so were the ghosts inside. The architect fleet had breached the heliosphere. They didn't come with drama, no visible propulsion, no battle cries or pre-warnings, just shadows, massive creeping voids that swallowed space like predators that had done this 1,000 times before. The smaller ones moved, ahead weaving among asteroids and minor moons, while the larger shapes remained in the distance, waiting, pulsing like hearts of black matter on board Collidernadia. Vale stood face to face with something she hadn't expected. To survive, the being that had formed inside the Nyx ship, her mirror, her double, her something stood fully awake now. Its body flickered with ancient energy and 1,000,000 encoded languages in constant motion under translucent skin. Its voice, when it spoke, echoed in her head, like the memory of thunder. I am. Interface echo, conscious projection for vessel command. Veil swallowed. Are you me? I am. What you unlocked, what you could become. You gave the ship a voice. It gave you shape, a rumble past. Through the chamber, not mechanical, not seismic. The second wave was arriving across the system. Alerts rang out. On Neptune's outer moon stations, sensors exploded with data. 8 new phase fractures, each larger than the first, had torn open. Through them crawled new architect forms, longer spined and trailing clouds of writhing particles that killed data. Just by existing comms, died systems glitched. Some ships fell dead in space, not destroyed by weapons, but by corrupted reality council fleets. Fired first plasma cannons, molecular lances, railguns, all lit up the black like fireworks. None of it worked. The enemy swallowed light and time like it was feeding, and still the Nyx ships did not fire until Ward gave the order on board Mars Command. His voice cut through every channel. This is it all. Vessels stand clear, Nyx fleet full sync authorization. Let them see what you really are. The ships responded instantly. Nyx 7. A collie moved first, gliding past Earth like a god waking from slumber. Then Nyx for Begant followed. By Valka, Shroud, and the others, all 12 fell into position, forming a constellation so precise it was as if the very laws of the universe bent around them. From their cores, energy pulsed, not radiation, but something stranger. Older symbols began forming in the air, above Earth's sky, visible even to the naked eye. Not written language, but instinct. Everyone felt them, not read them. The council species fell into silence. Some wept, others prayed, and the humans, they stood taller. Because they realized those ships weren't made to save humanity. They were made for humanity to command. Inside Calliope interface, Echo turned to Veil. "You are ready. Humanity is ready." Veil hesitated to do what the being stepped toward her, and suddenly, she wasn't in the ship anymore. She was in a memory, a galaxy burned to dust structures, drifting in space, planets sliced open like fruit stars left bleeding. The last cycle did not fight back. Veil blinked and us. The being smiled, a soft human smile. "You will." The Architect Vanguard reached Earth's defense line. The first strike came from Nyx. On 2C Serif. A beam of pure information, not destructive in the conventional sense, but corrective. It rewrote the matter of the oncoming ship, collapsing its molecular design until it could no longer exist. In this reality, the Architect blinked out of existence. The others paused. That was their mistake. The Nyx fleet opened fire together, not with weapons, but with truth-ancient patterns of war encoded in light and sound, designed not to destroy the enemy, but to expose its core code to the One. Force it couldn't overwrite free will, and humanity stood behind it. Imperfect, brutal, chaotic, unpredictable. And now armed, the Architect fleet stopped moving, not out of mercy, not because they'd been destroyed, but because for the first time in millions of years they had been confused. Their logic, once flawless, now faltered. Their cycle of extermination, designed to prevent stagnation. By purging advanced life, had always succeeded. Civilizations were predictable, proud, united in science, divided in purpose. They always felt the same way, but not this one. Humanity didn't act like a species at the top of the galactic ladder. It acted like a virus, like fire, fragmented, irrational. And now somehow in control of weapons older than extinction, the Nyx ships pressed forward, not in aggression, but in defiance. They did not chase, they did not hunt. They simply held the line, 12 massive silhouettes glowing with power far beyond plasma or mass drives. They weren't fighting just for Earth. They were reversing fate on Earth's surface. People gathered on rooftops, in fields, on beaches. The sky above had split with color pulses of light and shapes they couldn't describe, but somehow understood. The fear that once choked their hearts had been replaced with something harder, older, and far more dangerous to any invader, hope sharpened by fury. Children held their parents' hands while news drones floated silently. Overhead, soldiers in bunkers whispered old prayers in every language from every species, watching the same. The thought passed, like a ripple, the humans aren't dying today. On board Mars Command, Admiral Ward stood before the main screen showing the Architect fleet, hesitating at the edge of Neptune's orbit behind him. Sang was coordinating strike patterns, but even she could feel it. The tide had shifted. "They're not pushing." She said, "Why?" "They've never had to learn before," Ward replied. "They're built to consume, not adapt." Tapped a screen showing the synced Nyx fleet signatures, "But we did. That's why we were chosen, not because we were strong, not even because we found the ship." Sang looked over, then why Ward stared into the screen eyes. "Heavy because we survived anyway, and we never stopped fighting in Calliope's core." Interface, Echo guided Dr. Veil through the final stage of synchronization. The avatar shimmered. With purpose now fully formed, a perfect blend of ancient technology and living. "Will the enemy has entered decision stasis," it said. "They are calculating survival likelihoods. We have introduced chaos to their pattern. They cannot predict us." Veil nodded, her voice trembling. "So what happens now? We offer them a choice out beyond Neptune, between Jupiter's shadow and the silence of the deep dark. The architect mind form received the signal. It wasn't an ultimatum. It wasn't a threat. It was an invitation. A new equation, one written in chaos, defiance, and flame. It defied probability. It defied purpose. It defied them. The humans had introduced a virus into their system, but it wasn't code. It was possibility. The architects began to retreat one by one. The smaller constructs folded out of space, disappearing through fractures so small they barely left echoes. The larger ones hovered, longer, reluctant, confused, and then like fog retreating from the rising sun. They too vanished. No final blow, no last scream. Just a fading presence and then silence. The war wasn't won, it had been paused, but the message was clear. Humanity had earned the right to fight. 2 days later, the Council convened for an emergency summit on Earth. Representatives from every major species arrived, not in force, not in protest. In respect, the meeting took place in Geneva, inside an old Earth structure once used for climate agreements and peace accords. It was the humans' choice, and everyone accepted it. Admiral Ward stood before them. Not with swagger, not with pride, but with the quiet weight of someone who had seen extinction blink. He didn't speak. Long, we didn't want this war. We didn't want these ships. Hell, we didn't even know what we had until it was too late. But we held the line. He looked around at the gathered species. And we'll do it again, but not alone, no. One objected back aboard Colopy. Dr. Veal stood with interface echo one last time. The being smiled at her, gently fading. Our purpose is complete until the next cycle. Veil touched the crystal core, whispering, "You think they'll come back?" Echo's final words lingered in her mind like starlight. Not if they think you'll be waiting. And above Earth, in the vast silence of space, the Nyx fleet remained motionless, eternal. Watching 12 black giants once buried, now awaken, not gods, not guardians, but humanity's first promise to the stars: "You will never break us."